Okay, the last time we were together, we were talking about the circular flow model. We talked about the government, said all levels. Also talked about the two main components, which were businesses and households. We went through all of this stuff um, and said that households and businesses give taxes to the government. But now let's move on to what this kind of looks like. As I said before, households give factors of production to businesses, and then they would also give factor payments businesses back to the households. We said the government was involved to transfer payments and then purchases from the businesses, and then we would give taxes back and they would give business taxes back, and this is kind of how this would look. And as I said before, you might not want to write all this stuff out like the charts, but I would at least take the notes for sure. Let's move on to some terms that do deal with this a little bit. One of the terms that they, whoa, that was kind of weird. One of the terms that they talk about was budget deficit. What this is you spending more than what you have budgeted. Every company, hopefully your households have a budget that they're willing to spend their money on. But if you spend more than what you have budgeted, it actually creates a budget deficit, meaning you're spending much, much more than what you have allotted. You might be like, well, how can you do that? Well, a lot of times people do that on credit cards. They borrow money from other organizations, and that's what our government does. Our government during this pandemic has overspent way more than what they have budgeted. And so what do they have to do? They have to go to the Federal Reserve, which we'll talk about in a little bit today, and create more money. But there is the possibility, although rare, for a budget surplus. This is spending less than what you actually have budgeted, meaning you're actually saving money. Our government, believe it or not, used to do this. In the late 1800s, we had several time periods where we actually had a budget surplus. And then by the time the 1900s get around, at best you have a balanced budget, meaning you said you were going to spend $2 trillion and you spent $2 trillion. But rarely, if ever, do we ever have a budget surplus. But a budget surplus obviously is good because it means you have money in the bank. So let's move on to the next part of this circular flow model. And again, it might not be a bad idea for you guys if you want to have your book out and go to page 60. Kind of give it a little bit of visual. I'll have a visual aid up here in just a little bit. But you have the financial markets. Now, the reason why I don't want to say banks is because it's a lot more intricate than just banks. It's a lot more detailed than just banks. There's several things here that would apply to this, and I'll give them to you in just a second. But the financial markets are the heart of the circular flow model, meaning everything goes through the financial markets. Okay? Even though we all deal with the government, you and I do not deal with the Federal Reserve. You and I would deal with banks. Your parents go to banks. You maybe have a bank account. You put your money in the bank. You withdraw your money from the bank. You borrow money from the bank. And so that is the heart of the circular flow model. So make sure you know that. I'd highlight that. Examples of financial markets could be banks, as I said before, like the bank across the street from our school that we used to love going to and we miss, which most of us probably never thought we would miss it. Although maybe you guys are okay with this home learning thing. I'll be honest with you, it's a little more difficult for me to do home learning than it is for me to actually stand up in front of you guys and teach. Every joke that I have pre-written in my lectures just falls on deaf ears here, and I never really know if you guys are laughing. So my dog kind of smiles, but it's kind of, I think, just because she wants to be petted. Anyway, I digress. So banks, you also have loan companies where you can go to like a mortgage company. Like if your parents have a mortgage, they probably have a mortgage through a company more than likely. And when they go to those mortgage companies or those loan companies, they give you $200,000 or whatever to buy a house, and you pay them back. And so that would be part of a household doing that. A business, they would borrow money from large companies in order to get their business started. Credit unions can be a part of this. We will eventually go into the details and the differences between a bank and a credit union. They are ridiculously similar. They used to not be as similar, but today they are very, very similar. And I'll give you reasons why in the subsequent chapter. Insurance companies, this could be life insurance companies. This could be life insurance is basically like if you were to pass away, your family gets money to take care of themselves. But insurance companies would be part of this. This could be car insurance companies, house insurance, those things. You also have financial investors and advisors that would be part of the financial markets. This is what like Mr. Boyke and Mr. Chapman do. Maybe some of your parents, I think Emma Doyle's dad does this, and they would give you advice, sound advice, hopefully, on how to be a good investor and of your money. And so they would be part of the financial markets. And this could also even be the sellings of stocks and bonds on Wall Street. If your family wanted to buy Google stock or Apple stock or McDonald's stock or Nike stock or whatever, hopefully they're not buying oil stock. As you guys saw that, it dropped like minus 60% or something like that. It's just absolutely crazy. But anyway, these would be examples of financial markets. So when we use the word financial markets, don't just think banks, think a lot more details along the lines. So let's talk about what they give. Financial markets give loans to businesses. As I said before, if I wanted to start Doug's Pizza Video Company, which none of you guys got back with me on whether you thought that was a great idea or not, but if I wanted to start Doug's Pizza Video Company, I would go to a bank and ask for a loan to try to get that started, to break ground and build a building and get a huge oven that you make pizzas in, and get movies, popcorn, all of that type of stuff. So financial markets give loans to businesses. Financial markets give loans to households, and this is usually what we call DIS savings. The reason why it's called DIS savings is you're actually taking money out of the bank. And you might be like, well, what does a household borrow money from the bank for? Well, if you wanted to get a car, you might not have $10,000 to get a car. You might have $4,000, so you have to finance $6,000 of that. It could be the same thing as far as getting, you could get a home improvement loan. Some people get loans to go on a vacation. Some people get loans to go to college, that type of thing. And that's called DIS savings. And you go to the banks for that. Obviously, you would have to apply, and they have to check your credit scores and all of that to make sure everything's good to go. Financial markets also give loans to the government. And on occasion, banks will lend money to the government for a certain, for certain things that they would need. This doesn't happen as much as it used to, like in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Nowadays, the government just kind of creates their own money, but financial markets can give loans to the government if needed. So, what do households, businesses, and financial markets or government give back to these places? Well, businesses give repayments back to financial markets, meaning, if a business borrowed $100,000, then they would have to pay that back with interest, and that's called a repayment. Households give their savings to financial markets, but technically they could give repayments as well. But households would give savings to financial markets, meaning I would go ahead and make my money from the company that I work for, and then I would put that money into the bank. The bank would then use my money to let other people borrow money. That's kind of how they operate. And the government gives repayments to financial markets, meaning they pay them the money back with interest, just like businesses would if they do borrow it. That's the advantage of being a financial market. If people borrow money from you, then you have to pay them back, and you get that money with interest, which is nice. If you don't know what I mean by that, it would basically be like if David borrowed $1 from me, I told him, yeah, I'll give you $1, but every day that you don't pay me, I get 5 cents interest. So every day on that total. So like each day that interest keeps going up. And that's the reason why I would lend him the money, is because I know I'm going to get money back. So I tried to make a huge chart to show you kind of what this looked like. And this is kind of how it started. I mean, it was just a disaster. I had financial, house, government, bus. It was a disaster, and I couldn't get these things working. I got really, really frustrated. So I scrapped that and just said, I'm not going to do this one. So I tried another method, and I think I got this one, but it doesn't look exactly like your page 60 does. So again, maybe refer to your page 60, but this maybe would help you. Again, you have your households and businesses that give factor productions and factor payments back. Financial markets give loans to businesses. Businesses give repayments back to financial markets. Households give savings to financial markets, and financial markets give DIS savings back. The government, households give taxes to the government, and transfer payments from the government go back to the households, and then financial markets, the government goes loans and repayments. Now, this is just for some of you visual learners. You might want to just pause this and kind of embrace this and look at your notes, and hopefully it'll make more sense. But again, your chart on page 60 would actually probably look a little bit cleaner, a little bit neater, and probably make a little bit more sense to you. But I tried. Okay, so just give me some credit. I tried. That's all we ask for, right? And then the last component of the circular flow model would be the Federal Reserve. So we've talked about the main two, which is businesses and households. And then we talked about the government. and then financial markets, which is the heart of the circular flow model, and then the Federal Reserve. So there's really 5 parts that you will need to know, 5 parts that you will need to know for the circular flow model. The Federal Reserve is the government agency that regulates the creation of money, and they deal with interest rates, but they are the ones that create those crisp $20 bills that you get from the ATM machine, and they are the ones that do that. They just created a ton of money for these economic stimulus packages to help people through this pandemic time. And they work with just the financial markets and the government. And since the Federal Reserve is kind of technically the government, that's why on your book I do not think they don't have too many things going from Federal Reserve to the government, because they're basically the same thing. But they work with just the financial markets and government. They create, they can withdraw, and they can regulate money. The idea behind creating money would be get more money in circulation. Now that creates inflation, which sometimes can be bad and sometimes can be good. If it's monitored closely, it might not be a bad thing. But then it can also withdraw money. The Federal Reserve can withdraw money. And when they withdraw money from the economy, it creates deflation and makes your money more valuable. But they can also just regulate money as far as interest rates. Keep this in mind. The lower the interest rate that the Federal Reserve creates, the more people will want to buy big ticket items because they won't be paying a large sum in interest. The higher the interest rate, the less people will be wanting to buy big ticket items, which would be like a house or a car or like a home improvement loan, something along those lines. This is the illustration I'm just going to use the financial markets just because, again, it really got messy when I tried this. I must not really know how to use these computers very well. I'll keep working on it. I usually just draw out a chart that I give to you guys, but obviously for what it's worth, we don't have that. But anyway, the Federal Reserve, they create money and they give it to the financial markets. The financial markets would withdraw money from the Federal Reserve as well. So it could be both kind of how this works itself out. And again, if you want to see the chart that has the actual money going to it, that would be 63. That would be the additional thing here. Okay. So as we've gone through this, let me give you one thing here before we go to our last slide. You guys might be like, I don't understand why we're even talking about this. Think of it like this. The circular flow model, everything kind of works together. So if I bought a box of Cheez-Its, I would buy it from a business. That business itself would then, with that money that they made off of the box of Cheez-Its that I bought, they would pay their workers wages. Now, that worker with wages would then buy something from another business. Keep this in mind that both the worker the business, the Cheez-It business, and myself have to pay taxes to the government. And then the government would actually end up being involved in that part of things. And you have to keep in mind that I would withdraw my money to get the Cheez-Its, to withdraw money to get Cheez-Its from the grocery store. And then the businesses would actually get that money that they made, the profit, and they would actually give it back to the banks for savings and pay back their loans. That's how all of this works. It works every day like this, frequently. So the last slide I have here is this. Draw out the circular flow model. That's going to be your homework assignment for tonight. It'll be due on Thursday, and what you guys are going to need to do is you guys are going to have to literally get out a piece of paper and draw out the circular flow model found on page 63. So the full thing found on page 63. And the full thing, and you'll turn that in. I'll create an assignment, and you'll turn that in. Make sure that you guys are actually marking that you turn it in, because some of you aren't marking that, and it shows up that it's late. So you can be creative with this if you would like, or you can just quickly sketch out something, but it needs to be legible, and it needs to have all of the component parts for you to get full credit for this assignment. Of course, if you have any questions, please let me know.